Well, thank you for coming to our Halloween concert today, our concert and storytelling performance and our costume parade. I want to tell you a little bit about what we're doing, but first of all, I have to thank our sponsor. We want to thank the Community Bank for sponsoring today's event and providing all of the funding to help make this possible. And I want to tell you a little bit about what's going to be happening today. First of all, we're going to have some spooky and fun Halloween music that's going to be provided by this string quartet. Now, do you know what a string quartet is? It's 4 people, so there's a new word. A quartet means 4 people, and each of them plays a string instrument. They're going to show you a little bit about their instruments and let you listen to one of the sounds. We're going to do that in just a minute. Then after that, we'll have our storyteller come out, then a little bit more music, and at the end, we'll have our costume parade. So make sure you stay to the end after you parade with your costume and get some Halloween goodies. Then you'll have a chance to have some cookies and some punch at the end, and we'll have some arts and crafts for you too. So lots going on. So a string quartet that we're going to listen to today has string instruments. Let's see what we have. We have a violin. This is a violin. Let's listen to it. Really beautiful. We actually have 2 violins today. Then we also have a cello that has a slightly different sound. Let's see our cello. And in between in size, a little bit bigger than the violin and a little bit smaller than the cello is the viola. So let's listen to that. So the last thing I need to tell you is that there's going to be some parts of this that we need to be very quiet and put on our listening ears and listen very well. And that will be when the musicians are playing or the storyteller is talking. But when they're done, you can clap, you can cheer, you can bang your feet, you can make lots of noise, okay? And show them that you really appreciate what they just did for you. All right? So without further ado, we're ready to go. have a very talented storyteller. She's from out in Western Mass. I can't remember exactly where, but her name is Katie Green, and she's going to tell you some stories, some not too scary Halloween stories. So pay very good attention, and then when she's done, you can do what you're doing really well, which is jumping up and cheering, okay? So let's pay attention. Katie Green.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh, this is spooky out here, huh? I'm going to tell you a story about Halloween night. Are you going to go trick-or-treating? Yes? Yes? Okay. Well, this is a story about a little girl who was not going to go trick-or-treating on Halloween night because they didn't go trick-or-treating in her neighborhood, but she was looking forward to Halloween night. And then Halloween night came, and it was very, very dark, and it was very, very spooky. And I'm going to need your help for some of these spooky sounds. She heard owls hooting. Can you people over here be owls hooting? Hoo, hoo. Okay. She heard cats meowing. Can you be cats? Ooh, that's good. Good. She heard dogs howling. Howl! Okay, good. And then everybody together can be the wind that goes through the trees. It goes like this. Ooh. Can you do that together? Ooh. Okay. All right. Once there was a little girl who was home with her family on Halloween Eve, and it was a dark night with a big, round, orange moon, and she heard all sorts of scary sounds. She heard owls hooting. She heard cats meowing. She heard dogs yowling. And she heard the wind going through the trees. Ooh. She was so scared, she said, I'm getting away from all of this noise. I'm going to go up to my room. And she went up to her room, and she closed her door, and her big brother jumped out from behind the door and said, "Whoa!" He said, scared ya, ha, ha, ha. You thought I was a big, hairy, haunted, headless ghost, didn't you? She said, I did not. He said, yes, you did. She said, I did not. He said, did not. He said, ha, 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 I scared you. She said, no, you didn't. I'm not afraid of anything. I'm going to show you. I am going to go for a walk. I'm going to go for a walk outside all by myself. He said, ooh, on Halloween night? You're going to go outside? Ooh, I wouldn't do that. Don't you know that there's goblins out there and skeletons, and there's witches, and then there's the headless ghost that's out there? You're going to go out walking on Halloween night? She said, I am. I'm not afraid of anything. Now, I wouldn't go out walking by myself on Halloween night. I hope you wouldn't. No, okay. But this little girl did. She walked right outside, and she started walking down her street, and you can walk with me by slapping your thighs. She walked along, and all of a sudden, she thought she heard something behind her. Footsteps behind her. So she walked faster. And the footsteps behind her went faster. She walked slower. And the footsteps behind her walked slower. She stopped. And the footsteps behind her stopped. She said, I know what's happening here. She said, I know there's a goblin on this street, and it's just waiting to sneak up behind me and grab me. I know that's what it is. And then she did what people do when they're very, very brave, but they're in a scary situation. She started singing a song. She sang, there's no such thing, and the owls hooted. There's no such thing, and the cats meowed. There's no such thing, and the dogs howled. as goblins, and the wind went, ooh. Well, after she sang her song, she felt a little bit braver, and so she stamped her foot. She heard a footstep. She clapped her hands. She did it again. She said, that's it, that's it. This is the part of the street where there's an echo. And she called out, is there an echo? Yes, she said, I knew it all along. I knew it all along. Don't you know you can't fool me? I knew it all along. I'm not afraid of anything. Can you do that song with me? It's more fun when I have company. I knew it all along. Knew it all along. Good. I knew it all along. Knew it all along. Don't you know you can't fool me? Don't you know you can't fool me? I knew it all along. Oh, you're good at this. I'm not afraid of anything. So the little girl said, ha, ha. And she said, well, okay, I'm not afraid of anything, but I don't think I'm going to walk on this street anymore. I think I'll walk in the ditch. In the ditch? Yeah. She's going to walk in the ditch. She stepped down in the ditch, went along the road. It was wet in the ditch. There were things growing in the ditch. It was kind of muddy, and it sounded like this when she walked. You can do it with me. But all of a sudden, when she was walking, something grabbed her foot. Uh-oh. She pulled it loose, and then something grabbed her other foot. Uh-oh, she said, I know, there's a skeleton in the ditch. It's just been laying there waiting for me to step in the ditch, and it's grabbed me, and I can't get loose. And she was a brave little girl. So what'd she do? She sang her song. She sang, there's no such thing. There's no such thing. There's no such thing. As skeletons in ditches. And she heard the wind. She felt a little bit braver, so she looked down. There was no skeleton in that ditch. There were vines in the ditch. And she caught her foot in one of the vines, and she said, I knew it all along. I knew it all along. Don't you know you, with me, don't you know you can't fool me? I knew it all along. She said, I'm not afraid of anything. Right, but I don't think I'm gonna walk in this ditch anymore. I think I'll walk in those dark woods over there. Would you do that? I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it on Halloween night all by myself. But this little girl did. She started walking in the woods, and the woods were covered with dry leaves, so it sounded like this. Reach, 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 reach. She was walking along, and oh no! All of a sudden she saw a witch up ahead. It was just floating below the trees, and then she heard a sound. Oh no, it's a witch. But she sang her bravery song. There's no such thing, and the owls would do. There's no such thing. There's no such thing as witches. She felt a little bit braver, not real brave. She thought about going back home, but she took a step forward toward that witch. And she took another step, and another step, and she looked very, very closely, and it wasn't a witch at all. You know what it was? A branch had fallen down, and it was caught on a lower branch, and this branch that was caught still had leaves on it, and it looked like a witch floating on a broom. And that sound she heard, the ee, that was the two sticks rubbing together, going. You know what she said? She said, I knew it all along. I knew it all along. Don't you know you can't fool me? I knew it all along. She said, I'm not afraid of anything. But I don't think I'm going to walk in these dark woods anymore. I think I'm going to walk in that cemetery. I wouldn't do that. I hope you wouldn't do that. But this little girl did that. She walked over to the cemetery, and there was an iron fence along the cemetery. She picked up a stick, and as she walked, she rubbed the stick on those iron poles, and it went dung, 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 dung. Can you do that with me? Dung, 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 dung. She was walking along, and all of a sudden, oh, there she saw something up ahead. It was the headless ghost. She knew that's what it was. She saw these glowing eyes looking at her. It was just floating there. But she was brave, and she sang, there's no such thing, and the owls hooted. There's no such thing, and the cats. There's no such thing as headless ghosts. Oh, she thought maybe she'd go back home and just let her brother tease her. But she was feeling a little bit braver, and so she took a step toward the headless ghost. And then another step, and another step, and she saw it wasn't a headless ghost at all. It was a jack-o'-lantern, and it was sitting on top of a tombstone. There was a candle inside the jack-o'-lantern, so it was shining. She said, I knew it all along. I knew it all along. Don't you know you can't fool me? I knew it all along. She said, I'm not afraid of anything. But I don't think I'm going to walk in this cemetery anymore. I think I'm going to pick up this jack-o'-lantern and take it home with me. Now, I wouldn't do that. Would you do that? You don't know who left that jack-o'-lantern there, but this little girl picked up that jack-o'-lantern with the candle glowing inside it, and she tucked it underneath her arm. And then she started walking home. And she picked up that stick and rubbed it on the graveyard poles. Bung, 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 bung. And the light from the pumpkin made those iron posts glisten. And then she walked through the woods. Can you make the leaves with me? Crunch, 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 crunch. And the light from the pumpkin made it look like the shadows of the trees were moving. And then she walked in the ditch. And the light from that pumpkin made those vines look sharp and long. And then she walked on her street. And the light from inside the pumpkin glowed on all of the windows as she walked. And then she stopped in front of her house because all of the lights were off in her house. It was dark, and she heard the owls hoot. And then she heard the cats, and she heard the dogs howling, and she heard the wind going through the trees. But she was brave, and she walked right up the sidewalk until she came to her front door, and there she listened. It was so quiet. She couldn't even hear her brother teasing anybody. So she put her hand on the doorknob, and she turned the doorknob and opened the door, and it squeaked. She walked inside the dark, dark house. She took that jack-o'-lantern, and she walked past the table, and she heard, and then she walked over near the couch, and she heard, and she walked across the room, and she heard, So the little girl ran back to the table, and she put the jack-o'-lantern on the table, and she turned on the light. And there, underneath the table, was her father. Behind the couch was her mother. And wrapped up in a blanket next to the couch was her little sister. And her brother, the brother that was always teasing her, he was inside the closet. And he was holding the door shut with 2 hands. And the little girl said, "Hey, what's going on here?" And then her brother came out of the closet and he said, "Well, after you left, we turned off all of the lights and we started telling scary stories. And we told a story about a goblin and a story about a skeleton and a story about a witch, and we were just going to start the story about the headless ghost when we looked out the window and we saw the headless ghost walking down the street carrying his head underneath his arm. And then we saw the headless ghost stop in front of our house. And then the headless ghost walked right up to our front door and came in and looked at each one of us. And the little girl said, "Don't you know, there's no such thing. There's no such thing. There's no such thing as headless ghost." And her mother and her father and sister and brother answered her by saying, "We knew it all along. We knew it all along. Don't you know you can't fool us? We knew it all along." Let's all do it together. I knew it all along. I knew it all along. Don't you know you can't fool me? I knew it all along. Woo! I'm not afraid of anything. Great. Okay, I think you guys are ready for a story that's a little bit scarier than that one. Yeah. And I'm going to borrow a chair. There was an old woman who sat in her house all alone next to the fireplace. And she was spinning. She had a spinning wheel. And she sat and she spun and she wished she had company. And there was a knock at the door. And then the door opened. And across the floor in front of her walked 2 huge, huge feet. And they settled down in the chair on the other side of the fireplace. But still the woman spun, and still she wished for company because huge, huge feet are not company. There was a knock at the door, In came some thin legs. And those thin legs sat down on those thick feet. And still she sat, and still she spun, and still she wished for company. In came some thick knees, and they settled down on those thin legs. But still she sat, and still she spun, and still she wished for company. In came pair of thin thighs. And those thin thighs sat down on those thick knees. And still she sat, and still she spun, and still she wished for company. In came some broad hips. And those broad hips settled down on those thin thighs. And still she sat, and still she spun, and still she wished for company. In came a thin waist. And that thin waist sat down on those broad hips. And still she sat, and still she spun and wished for company. In came thick, broad shoulders. And they settled down on that wee thin waist. And still she sat, and still she spun, and still she wished for company. In came some thin arms. And they attached themselves to those broad shoulders. Still she sat, still she spun, and still she wished for company. In came some huge hands, and they fastened themselves to the thin arms. And still she sat, and still she spun, and still she wished for company. In came a thin neck, and that thin neck attached itself to those broad shoulders. And still she sat, and still she spun, and still she wished for company. In came a huge head, and it attached itself to that thin neck. And the old woman looked and said, tell me, where'd you get those broad feet? And the strange visitor answered, much tramping. And you can repeat it after me. Much tramping. And where'd you get those wee thin then the strange visitor answered a strange answer. He said, ah, late and wee. What that means, this is a Scottish story, it means I was always given my porridge, my cereal, late, and there wasn't very much of it. So he says, ach, can you do that? Ach, late, and wee means a little bit, wee, mool means cereal. Okay, so see if you can do that with me in the high, high voice. Ach, late, and wee, mool. She said, where'd you get those big, big knees? He said, much praying, much. And where'd you get those thin, thin thighs? He said, oh, late and wee moon. And where'd you get those broad, broad hips? He said, much sitting, much sitting. And where'd you get that thin, thin waist? He answered, up late and wee woo. Where'd you get those broad, broad shoulders? Much carrying, much carrying. And where'd you get those thin, thin arms? Up and wee. And where'd you get those huge, huge hands? Much threshing with an iron and flail, threshing with an iron flail. And where'd you get that thin, thin, late and wee? What comes next? And where'd you get that huge, huge head? Much thinking, much thinking. And why did you come here? She asked. And the strange visitor answered, I came for you. It's a strange visitor. Thank you. Thank you very much. And let's hear some more music.
Well, thank you very much to Katie. That was wonderful. And now we want to welcome back our musical witches, Carol, Susan, Brian, and Ginny. They're going to come back out. And now that you have your imaginations all warmed up, I want you to use your imagination as you listen to these next couple of pieces of music. And maybe you can imagine your own ghost story, okay? Here they are.
This Veterans Day, BCA will proudly air a marathon on BCA 12, the government access channel of the Veterans History Project. Brockton Community Access and the Brockton Council on Aging have been working together since last June to produce the Veteran History Project, a half-hour interview program dedicated to preserving the personal stories of our local veterans. The program is part of the national effort by the Library of Congress to preserve the personal history of veterans and citizen civilians who are actively involved in supporting war efforts, such as war industry workers, USO workers, flight instructors, medical volunteers, and more through the collection of oral history interviews, memoirs, letters, diaries, photographs, and any other available personal memorabilia. So be sure to tune in on Veterans Day to BCA 12, the government access channel, to see all of the episodes produced to date of the Veteran History Project. This fall, Brockton Community Access and the Brockton Public School System team up once again to bring you Boxer Athletics, featuring your Super Bowl champion Boxer football team. All games and programs will air on Channel 98, the educational programming channel. BCA Sports, just one more way BCA is connecting our community.